Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome British Robinson of Prosper Africa.
Good afternoon. I am absolutely excited to be here at the annual Concordia Summit. I'm honored to be joined in person by U.S. Ambassador Puneet Talwar and virtually by U.S. Ambassador Meg Whitman for a brief session on why invest in Africa. I'm British Robinson, the coordinator of Prosper Africa. Prosper Africa is a U.S. presidential-level national security initiative formed to catalyze two-way trade and investment between the United States and Africa. Prosper Africa, through our work, we mobilize instruments, services, and resources across 17 U.S. government agencies to empower businesses and investors with risk mitigation, market insights, deal support, and financing opportunities. Simply put, we enable African economies to more fully participate in the global capital markets. African nations play an essential role in the global economy, with some of the fastest growing economies in the world and a growing population that is increasingly young, urban, and digitally connected. The United States, in turn, offers a large consumer base, the world's deepest capital markets, and a commitment to job creation, transparency, and social responsibility. Africa is changing, and by all accounts, rising. A few quick fundamentals. By 2050, we know the population of the continent will double to 2.5 billion, while the rest of the world ages. 60% of Africa's population will be under 25. By 2040, Africa's workforce of 1.1 billion people will be the largest in the world, more than India and China combined. In 2011, Africa had 11 million cell phone connections. By 2028, it is expected to have 689 million. An example of just how massive technological change will accelerate productivity growth. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement, or AfCFTA, will establish the world's largest trading bloc in terms of population and land mass. In short, we've reached a tipping point in our commercial, economic, and diplomatic relationships with Africa. We are truly moving beyond aid to real investment. Africa itself has also reached a tipping point in its own development journey as fundamentals have changed. Africa will not wait for the United States and the American private sector to notice. We must notice now. We must build enduring trade and investment linkages today, or risk not being a part of Africa's future. And we very much want to be a part of Africa's future. The end state for the US government is very clear. We want African nations to have the tools to chart their own development journey through free and transparent markets. With that, I could spend all afternoon continuing to make the case for investing in Africa. But let me have two people who are dear friends and colleagues, Ambassador Whitman and Ambassador Talwar, tell you more about the opportunities of investing in Africa. And let us start with Ambassador Whitman. Thank you.
Coordinator Robinson, Ambassador Talwar, and all of you joining us today, please accept my warm greetings from Nairobi. Jambo. I am sorry I'm not able to participate in person at the Concordia Summit. This forum and the ideas you are all focused on continue to set the pace for building the durable public-private partnerships that offer hope in a world that only seems to grow more complicated every day. Thank you for this opportunity. I've been asked to focus on several topics near and dear to my heart, which are One, why the United States must continue to expand economic engagement with Africa. Two, what policies the United States government is supporting to help open doors to vital African markets. And finally, the importance of partnerships in helping put Africa on the map as an investment destination for U.S. investors. If you want to know what public and private investment is accomplishing in Kenya, let me tell you about my past few weeks. I rode on a fully electric bus. I donned rubber gloves and an apron to turn plastic waste into reusable material in a country that has largely banned single-use plastics. I dug the first shovels of fresh dirt for a vast new medical oxygen facility. I held solar-assisted batteries that will go into swap stations for electric delivery motorcycles. And I met with artists who are pouring energy into Kenya's already thriving creative economy. Yes, all of this is in Kenya. All of this involves financial backing from U.S. private sector investors or from the International Development Finance Corp. And all of those are projects I visited just in the past month. There's a lot more opportunity where that came from. This goes to the first point of a presentation I have been sharing in the United States and Kenya recently. Why Africa? I have been answering that question for more than 2 years as America's ambassador to Kenya, a partner that is important enough to have merited a state visit in May. I do not have time to repeat the litany of answers to that question, why Africa? You're here, and I suspect we are already on the same page. The numbers do not lie. From Ambassador Talwar's perch in Morocco to my office in Nairobi, 4,000 miles away, this is a very young and growing continent. By 2050, 1 in 4 people and 1 in 3 working-age people will live in Africa. Let me just give you one other number, 18 million. That's how many micro, small, and medium enterprises are in Kenya, according to recent estimates, though only half are formally registered. Many of these businesses are poised for growth with the right investment partners. Small business is the engine of economic growth in America, and they are the driver in Kenya. I can tell you the engine here is humming along. I told you that that was the last statistic, but I do have one more. What can I say? I love data. Do you know that 90% of Kenya's electricity comes from renewable sources? Kenya's green energy sector is already thriving and can help U.S. companies reach their Scope 2 and Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions goals. Let's move on to the policies the United States supports to help open the door wider to investment and trade. First and foremost, we have been a vocal supporter of removing bureaucratic barriers to trade and investment. The government of Kenya is taking important steps, such as working to eliminate the VAT on export services, new tax incentives for investors, and efforts to revitalize special economic zones. I've also used my position to firmly push for more consistency and predictability in economic policies, as well as speak out against what I consider to be the largest remaining barrier to investment in many countries, and that is corruption. Make no mistake, the conditions for an economic miracle are here. As Bloomberg pointed out in 2023, Kenya is poised to become the Singapore of Africa. We're not quite there yet, largely due to the lingering fog of corruption. I'm not here to point fingers of blame. This is a problem worldwide, but I also want us to be honest about the challenges. Kenya's young people are stepping up and demanding progress. The change must come from within, and I applaud the country's Gen Z for exercising their constitutional rights of free speech and peaceful assembly to push for changes that will benefit Kenya and benefit the U.S.-Kenya partnership. The United States will continue to support its partner, Kenya, and I'm very bullish on the long-term prospects of our partnership. But speaking as someone who has led 2 Fortune 500 companies, the U.S. government is not the one who will lead Kenya to innovate and reach its full potential. It's those 18 million Kenyan small businesses. Our role at the embassy is to be a partner and to tell the story of our partnership. Here is the story. Kenya is ready to succeed, and it is open for investment. I'm confident that by partnering with American investors, Kenya will take building buses and recycling plastics and delivering medical services and designing EV batteries to the next level. Kenya is open for business and is ready to continue on its trajectory as a regional leader.
Please welcome back British Robinson and the Honorable Puneet Talwar, U.S. Department of State.
Well, good to be with you all again. Ambassador Talwar, it's wonderful to be with you and to see our dear colleague, Ambassador Whitman. And as she said, Kenya is open for business, but Africa is open for business. Ambassador Morocco is open for business. So with that, I had the privilege of joining you in Morocco a couple months ago as part of the U.S.-Morocco Venture Capital Forum and experienced firsthand that growing, vibrant entrepreneurship, venture capital sort of ecosystem. Could you tell us more about that? And from your perspective, what makes Morocco, like Kenya, such an attractive investment destination?
Well, first of all, thank you, British, for joining me here on the stage today and for asking me to come here. And thank you for the incredible work on the Venture Capital Forum, which really, I think, showcased the vibrancy, the talent, and the innovation of Moroccan entrepreneurs. And I think it was really just a small example of what I see in Morocco every day and why it is such a good destination for investment, a good place to do business. Morocco has a lot of things going for it. It's a very stable country. It's well run. The central bank does an excellent job in terms of financial management. It has macroeconomic stability. It has a very stable currency. And I think all of that should be reassuring for investors. It's also got world-class infrastructure. They do very well in ports. Their main port, Tanger Med, is actually the largest by container volume in Africa and in the Mediterranean. And they're building actually two very similar ports to that, so you can get your ships, your goods to destination very easily. It does very well on roads, and it has high-speed rail, and these infrastructure investments are only going to increase ahead of the 2030 World Cup. It's also basically a gateway and a bridge, I would say, a bridge between Europe, Africa, and the United States, and in many ways is a gateway to Africa. It's got also very good investment incentives. About 30% of CapEx can be in the form of an incentive, and there's a guarantee on repatriation of profits. And finally, I would say, just as the American ambassador to Morocco, Morocco is it's in our enlightened self-interest for Morocco and for Africa, I would say, to succeed. And why do I say that? Morocco is a very pro-Western, pro-American place. We have about an approval rating that stands in about 74, 75%. It was the first country to recognize the United States. Not many people know that. And it is also, I would say, a country that is very committed to coexistence. And that's so important in that region and in today's world. Its constitution, in fact, recognizes the very complex and elements of their identity, the Hebraic character, the Andalusian, the Mediterranean, the Arab, and they embrace that. And that's something which is really very positive to see from an American standpoint.
So, Ambassador, that's a lot. It's clearly open for business. Maybe I'll just pull the thread a little bit. Tell us a bit more about what you're really excited about when it comes to trade. You mentioned the free trade agreement that we have, which most Americans don't know. Maybe you can elaborate a bit more on that. But also, what areas, what sectors are you bullish around when it comes to trade with the U.S.? And what are those opportunities that you can share with the audience today?
So, in terms of some of the sectors that Morocco has excelled in, automotives is probably the top of the list. They're the #1 exporter of cars from Africa, primarily to Europe, and they're looking to now get actually into the electric mobility space as well. They do very well in aeronautics. Every single Airbus and Boeing plane flying today has a part made in Morocco. Renewables is also a huge area, just as Ambassador Whitman mentioned. Morocco is probably the most valuable piece of real estate on the face of the earth when it comes to a combination of solar and wind. And they also have a government policy that's very favorable to renewables. So about 40% of their installed capacity is from renewables. They want to take that to over 50% by 2030. And so they have a real commitment to this, and green hydrogen is another area in particular that they're investing in. And I would add that because of Morocco's location, these energy supplies and renewables aren't susceptible to the same kinds of disruptions that you see in other parts of the world.
Thank you. And just, we know Morocco's open for business, but are there any thoughts that you have around how we can better collaborate? I mean, one of the reasons you're here in New York, maybe expand on actually why you're here and why this is a core sort of part of your remit as ambassador and part of our economic and commercial diplomacy efforts.
Yeah, well, British, I think apart from the fact that you're so convincing and brought me over here, it's also, I have to say, a very, as I mentioned at the outset, it's in our enlightened self-interest for Morocco and for Africa to succeed. I think there are a lot of preconceived notions that are frankly incorrect about doing business in Africa, about doing business in Morocco. And I understand that. There's a lot of risk that may be seen from the outside. And in fact, Moroccan companies can be your partner in Africa, because they've been doing business in especially West and Central Africa for decades, and they've been doing very well. They make a lot of money, and they want to partner with Americans. They look to the West, they look to the United States. And it's a very young population, as you mentioned, as Ambassador Whitman mentioned. The median age in Morocco is about 29 years old. And so it's a very youthful population. And I think we're not doing ourselves any favors by not engaging with that population the way we should be. I think a lot of money is being left on the table, to put it very bluntly. But it's also, if we see the field, somebody else, actors who don't share our values, who don't share our interests, are going to come in and fill that space. And worse, people will be just cut off from the overall economic system. So that's why I feel very passionately about this, and why I'm glad that you convinced me to come here today.
Great. And just as we, sort of a quick session, but as we close, is there one thing you want to, if there's investors here in the room, what's the one ask you have of them? Thinking about Morocco as a gateway, but Morocco is very much a part of the entire continent. And I think a lot of people are not aware of that. But what's the one thing you would ask them, or you would tell them as they think about investing in Africa?
Well, a couple of fun facts. It's only 6 hours away from JFK. I took the flight back last night, actually. We're going to have another flight from Newark to Marrakesh, which is a great place to visit, so I encourage you all to come. 2030 World Cup, the Moroccan team, first African and Arab team to make it to the quarterfinals, to the semis. So I think they'll be quite excited about that. But apart from that, I would just say that, again, Morocco has been doing business there, can be your partner if you're concerned about some of the risk. You can help mitigate that by partnering with Morocco. And think about this as an opportunity. Again, don't do it just out of charity. This will actually benefit you if you're an investor. But you can do it with partners who have been there, and I think Prosper is there. People like my mission in Morocco, Ambassador Whitman's, and all of our colleagues who work around there are there for that purpose. We're there to serve you. We're there to make connections. We're there to de-risk. We're there to catalyze, to make connections, and to make you more comfortable about doing business there. Well, because ultimately, it serves our interest.
That's right. I think that's a great way to end. And if you take nothing away, please be sure to visit the website for Prosper Africa on behalf of the 17 U.S. agencies that we mobilize to catalyze investment on the continent, obviously in Morocco, to Kenya, all the way down to the Cape of Good Hope. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you all about opportunities to partner with us. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you.